Really frustrating audio from Soledad O'Brien because she's just such a non-journalist, yet she poses as a journalist. Here she is with Allen West, and she started talking, first of all, let's get Allen West on, and let's not talk about security. Let's talk about Ted Nugent. He said, I'm not here to talk about Ted Nugent.
I'm not here to talk about what Nugent said or what Romney said in response to what Nugent said.
Yeah. He's like, I'm here. There's too many important things to do. Yeah. I'm not going to talk to you about Nugent or Romney. That's a ridiculous thing. We know what's going on here.
Okay, let's talk about what you said. I think it was last week, Jensen Beach. You were talking about members of the Communist Party. I'm going to play a little clip about what you said.
There's about 78 to 81 members of the Democratic Party that are members of the Communist Party.
You said, I believe there are 78 to 81 members of the Democratic Party that are members of the Communist Party. You mean like card-carrying members of the Communist Party?
Well, unfortunately, Soledad, you didn't play the entire thing, and I talked about the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And we've been back and forth about this, and I've had to give quite a few people a little tutorial about the political spectrum of ideologies, and there's a thin separation. And at the turn of the century here in the United States of America, American communists renamed themselves progressive. But the strategy and the tactics and the ideology still remains the same.
Stop.
And when you remember...
Stop. He's exactly historically right. 100% right. The communists remained. But what they did was they split. And they said, look, we don't want a revolution. We don't want a revolution. You don't want to have the bloodshed in the streets. So we'll do it a different way. We'll do it in progressive steps. And we'll eventually get there. That was the whole idea behind the progressive movement. Progress. Progress to what? Progress to more telephones? Progress to that's the question that progressives should ask themselves. Progress to what? A better tomorrow is what they'll give you. Well, how do you get to a better tomorrow? By the end, it's redistribution of wealth, the capping of salaries. So nobody makes any more than anybody else. You can only make a certain amount.
Income equality. We're going through that right now.
Income equality. Land grabs, so nobody has private property. That nobody can own homes and all that stuff. In the end, when you get them to go beyond, well, what exactly is the future? Well, they're saying it now. China is the example of the future. Well, what is China? Communist. You can call it whatever you want. You know, that's what I love, national socialists. Well, we call that Nazism, but it's not. It's National Socialists. That's what their party was, the National Socialists. So you can call them Nazis because it sounds spooky, but they're socialists and communists.
Yeah, there's one member of the Senate that is a member of the Progressive Caucus. Guess who it is? Bernie Sanders.
You mean the communist? Or Socialist Caucus.
I'm saying the Progressive Caucus. He's a member of the Progressive Caucus. He calls himself a socialist.
Yes, you're right. There's one.
Yeah, I mean,
but you tell me what Maxine Waters is when she says, I'll tell you what this liberal is all about. Yeah. This liberal is all about...
And guess what this liberal will be all about? This liberal will be all about socializing, would be about basically taking over and the government running all of your companies.
Remember? Mm-hmm. So he goes on, and what he's saying here is exactly 100% verifiable in any decent search of history.
Of a caucus that actually wanted to have a constitutional amendment to redistribute wealth in the United States of America. I don't think that's in keeping with the principles and values of this country.
So name names for me.
Budget amendment.
Stop. Listen to what she's doing. So name names for me. So now, who is she? Is she McCarthy or is he? Give me a list of names, sir. Give me a list of names.
No, we do. I'm dying to know which are the members of Congress that are
caucus.
Okay, stop. She's so disingenuous. This is why she's not a journalist. This is why CNN is in the shape that they're in. Not a journalist. Clearly not a journalist. No. I'm very interested in the names. You have the names. I just told you. It's the Progressive Caucus. Anybody who's in the Progressive Caucus. No, I'm just, give me the names. Give me the names. Give me who are the names?
So she's about to start naming.
You have the list of the Progressive Caucus. There it is.
Progressive, I've got them right here.
Progressive Caucus.
Progressive Caucus members. So Keith Ellison is a communist?
Yes.
Okay, stop. Keith Ellison is a communist?
He probably has communist ideology.
Why do you think she went after Keith Ellison?
Because he's Muslim.
He's in the Progressive Party, and he's Muslim. So you've got the 1-2 punch.
Yep.
You have, and is he black?
I don't know.
He's African American, or I don't know what. He's not pink. So so you've got. I think this was a loaded question because you've got Keith Ellison on many different fronts.
And then listen to who else she names.
And by the way, is it hard to believe that Muslims would be in bed with extremists? Or people who believe in socialism? Read their own work. Social justice. Read what's happening in Egypt. It's all about social justice. It's all about capitalism is evil. According to Islam, capitalism is evil. Now, that's not according to Islam. That's according to their version of Islam. So is it completely unheard of? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. And if you want a historic case on it, I'll give you the historic case. I'll go home to my house, I'll go into the library, and I'll pull out document after document after document of Islam, from Islam, here in the United States, talking about social justice, talking about socialism, and saying how it is the way of Allah.
You know something?
Raul Grijalva is a communist?
Well, look, I'm just talking about the fact of the ideologies, the principles that you believe in. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it.
No, but I want to know what you're calling it.
Notice she's not saying. Hang on a second. Notice she's not saying Maxine Waters is a communist.
Yeah, you know who's the most famous person in the Progressive Caucus? Again, who knows? But my guess would be Dennis Kucinich. I mean, he's the guy who's always on television. He's the guy who represents these ideas. But he doesn't name Dennis Kucinich because everybody knows Dennis Kucinich
and
is
she
a
doesn't
socialist.
Name Maxine Waters because Maxine Waters showed her socialist communist tendencies by talking about taking over and running businesses, for the government. So she's avoiding the obvious. She's throwing in all the minorities like Raul Grijalva. I mean, yes, he probably is. Ask him.
Hang on just a second.
Ask him.
There is no difference anymore, really, between the communist and the socialist and the anarchist. At this point, there will be again, but at this point, they're all joined on one purpose, and that is to destroy the Western way of life, destroy capitalism, ownership, income equality, spread the wealth around. That's their goal.
But most people would back down at this point, being grilled like this on national television on CNN. Not Allen West. He really doesn't back off.
On this, communist, progressive, Marxist, socialist, statist, which is another term that's been used. I'm looking at the ideologies. I'm looking at the things that they believe in. And if you don't think that we have to stand upon truth and be able to identify and clearly contrast the different principles and values and ideologies and principles of governance here in this country, then we're never going to get to the fact of accepting the true debate that's happening in America.
Okay, stop. You see this? This is the truest thing I have heard from a politician in a long time. He's not condemning it. He's saying if you refuse to not notice the difference, the similarities between me and the Founding Fathers and them and the similarities between them and Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto, I'll identify myself with the Constitution and the Founding Fathers. They don't want to do that. So who are they closest to? They're closest to Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto. If you're not willing to have the debate and say, look, yes, we identify, okay, so we're not communists, we're progressives, but we identify with 8 out of 10 things that Karl Marx said. We think they're true. 3 out of 10 things that he said in the Communist Manifesto. We agree with those things. And I don't have a problem with it. Communist Manifesto comes from the Bible, doesn't matter. Yep, it's there in the Communist Manifesto. I think that's pretty good. 3 out of the 10. If you're not willing to recognize your similarities, of who you are most like, and you're not willing to have an honest debate about what you really believe, well, then you can't fix anything. And that's what she's doing. All she wants to do is engage in name-calling. This is why Stuart Chase, this is why I did the essay recently about Stuart Chase. Stuart Chase is a guy who he was the New Deal guy. And he wrote a book, The Road We're Traveling. And in it, he talked about a political system X. He said, call it progressivism, call it communism, call it socialism. I prefer to call it political system X. What other people call it later is up to them. But that's the key. He said at the time, now remember, he's a statist. He's a guy who believes in all of this stuff. He believed that it was not important to label it because labeling it just stirs everything up. But look what it is. Forget about it. Are they communist? Are they Marxist or whatever? Forget about the labels. What is it they actually believe? What is it their actions say? When you put that next to the Communist Manifesto and the U.S. Constitution, which one is it closest to? And if it's closest to the Communist Manifesto, is that where you want to go? We have a reasonable debate. Is that where you want to go? But let's forget about the name and the title. Is that what you want? Let's have that debate, because that's the real debate that's going on, but nobody's talking about it. Because today we're talking about, or yesterday we were talking about Ted Nugent, or we're talking about food deserts, or we're talking about the scandal with the Secret Service, or we're talking about how evil Romney is because he wants to take birth control pills off of the kitchen, the bathroom counter of every woman in America. We're talking about something ridiculous where we're not talking about really which direction do you want to go? Because that's all this is, direction. Are you going to go towards Marx or towards Madison? Either one. You decide. That's what America's about currently. But we're not having an honest debate. And the reason why we're not is because of people like Soledad O'Brien.